Dr. Vextai adjusted his viewing screen and smiled with all three of his mouths. After 47 years of studying alien species across the galaxy, he had seen everything, or so he thought. The blue and green planet floating on his screen looked peaceful and ordinary. The species living there had just started sending radio signals into space. They called themselves humans, and they lived on a world they named Earth. Another simple job, Dr. Vextai told his assistant, Kilnara. She was young and eager, with bright purple skin and 6 eyes that sparkled with excitement. "How long do you think this will take?" she asked, setting up the recording equipment. "1 week, maybe 2 at most," Dr. Vextai replied. "They look like basic bipedal creatures. 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head. Very standard design. We'll watch them for a few days, write our report, and move on to the next planet." Their third team member, Morden, was already working at his computer. His metal body clicked and whirred as he processed data. "I have selected a small settlement for observation," he announced. "Population, 50,000 humans. It should give us a good sample of their behavior." The Galactic Research Institute had given them this assignment because humans seemed so ordinary. Every other species they had studied followed predictable patterns. Predators hunted. Prey animals ran away. Social creatures formed groups with clear leaders. It was all very logical and easy to understand. Dr. Vextai had written reports on 847 different species. Each report was neat, organized, and made perfect sense. He expected this one to be no different. "Beginning observation now," Kilnara said, pointing their cameras at the human settlement. The first human they focused on was named Tai-Ho. He was 28 years old and worked at a small store that sold food and drinks. The store stayed open all night, and Tai-Ho worked the late shift from midnight to 8 in the morning. "Observe how he performs his duties," Dr. Vextai instructed. "We can learn about their work culture and social structure." They watched Tai-Ho arrange products on shelves, clean the floors, and serve customers. Everything seemed normal for the first few hours. Humans came in, selected items, paid with small pieces of metal and paper, and left. Very standard behavior. "See?" Dr. Vextai said confidently. "Simple trading system. Clear exchange of goods for currency. They're probably just like the Zephyrians from Sector 7. But then something strange happened. At exactly 3 in the morning, a human stumbled into the store. The aliens could immediately tell something was wrong with this one. He walked in zigzag. Lines bumped into things and made loud noises. His name was Dongwu, according to their translation system. "Fascinating," Kilnara whispered. "This human appears to be malfunctioning." Dongwu approached the counter carrying a sock. The sock was full of small metal coins that jingled when he walked. He also had a small plastic triangle that their computers identified as a guitar pick, and half of what appeared to be a food item with meat and vegetables between 2 pieces of bread. "I want to buy energy drinks," Dongwu announced loudly, placing these items on the counter. The aliens expected Tai-Ho to refuse this clearly inappropriate payment. Every other species they had studied would have simple, logical responses to such behavior. Either call for security, ask for proper payment, or simply refuse service. Instead, Tai-Ho looked at the sock full of coins, the guitar pick, and the half-eaten sandwich. He nodded seriously. "How many energy drinks?" Tai-Ho asked. 3, Dongwu replied. Tai-Ho took the sock of coins, weighed it in his hands, examined the guitar pick closely, and even sniffed the sandwich. Then he went to the refrigerator, selected 3 energy drinks, and handed them to Dongwu. "Thank you for your business," Tai-Ho said politely. Dongwu left happily with his drinks. Dr. Vextai stared at the screen. His 3 mouths hung open, in confusion. Did that human just accept random objects as payment? Kilnara asked. "Maybe their economic system is more complex than we thought," Dr. Vextai said slowly. "Perhaps those items have special value we don't understand." Morden's metal fingers clicked rapidly as he analyzed the interaction. "Scanning database for similar behavior patterns," he announced. "No matches found in 847 previously studied species." The aliens decided to observe more humans to understand this economic system better. They focused their cameras on a building where young humans went to learn, A female human named Boram was teaching a group of small humans. Education facility, Dr. Vextai noted. Excellent. We can study their knowledge transfer methods. Boram was explaining something about their planet's sky. A small human named Minho raised his hand. Teacher, why is the sky blue? Minho asked. The aliens leaned forward eagerly. This was perfect. They would hear how humans explained scientific concepts to their young. Boram smiled and sat on her desk. Well, Minho, a long time ago there were giant creatures living in the clouds. These giants were very sad because they had to stay in the sky all the time and couldn't come down to play with humans. Dr. Vextai's eyes widened. This was completely wrong. The sky appeared blue because of light scattering in the atmosphere. Every scientifically advanced species knew this. The giants cried and cried. Boram continued, but their tears were blue instead of clear like human tears. When they cried, their blue tears spread across the sky, making it blue for everyone to see. And that's why the sky is blue. All the small humans nodded happily, accepting this explanation. Completely. Do they deliberately spread false information to their offspring? Shilnara gasped. Perhaps they have a different understanding of scientific truth, Dr. Vextai suggested, though he sounded uncertain. Their confusion grew when they observed their third subject, Wu Jin. He was a 22-year-old who lived in a building with other young humans while attending a learning institution. At 4 o'clock in the morning, they found Wu Jin lying on the floor of his small room. He had a bowl of cereal balanced on his chest and was eating while staring at the ceiling. On a small screen, he was watching videos of other humans falling downstairs, walking into glass doors and tripping over their own feet. While watching these videos, Wu Jin was also reading a thick book about quantum physics and taking notes. But most surprisingly, he was having a conversation with a small plant sitting on his windowsill. I don't know what to do with my life, Mr. Green, Wu Jin said to the plant. Should I study harder or just accept that I'm going to fail all my classes? He paused, staring at the plant as if waiting for an answer. You're right, he continued. I should probably eat more vegetables. Thanks for the advice. Morden's processing unit began making strange noises. Subject is performing 17 different activities simultaneously, he reported. This should be impossible for a single consciousness to manage. The aliens watched in growing bewilderment as Wu Jin continued his conversation with the plant. While studying physics and watching videos of humans injuring themselves, he seemed completely comfortable with this bizarre combination of activities. Maybe we need to study them longer, Dr. Vextai said, though his confidence was starting to fade. They observed their fourth subject, Hae Jin, a 45-year-old human who worked in an office building with many other humans. She arrived at work exactly at 9 o'clock, sat at a desk, and began typing on a computer. This seemed normal until they noticed what she was typing. According to their translation system, she was writing detailed stories about fictional characters who lived in a world where kitchen appliances could talk and fall in love with each other. She spent 3 hours writing about a romantic relationship between a toaster and a coffee maker, complete with dialogue and dramatic scenes. Then she had a meeting with other humans about quarterly sales projections, where she spoke in completely different language about numbers and charts and market trends. After the meeting, she returned to her desk and immediately went back to writing about the toaster and coffee maker's wedding ceremony. They appeared to live in multiple realities simultaneously, Kilnara observed. Dr. Vextai rubbed his temples with his tentacles. This was supposed to be a simple assignment. Humans looked so ordinary from space. They had a basic body structure, lived in organized settlements, and used simple technology. But their behavior made no sense at all. Sir, Morden announced, I am detecting anomalous patterns in all subjects. Their actions do not follow any logical sequence I can identify. Keep observing, Dr. Vextai ordered. There must be some explanation. No species can survive and develop technology while acting completely irrationally. But as they continued watching, the humans only became more confusing. Teho closed his store at 8 in the morning, but instead of going home to sleep, he went to a park and spent an hour talking to squirrels. Boram left her teaching job and went to a building where she paid money to run on a machine that went nowhere. Wu Jin attended a class about ancient literature, then immediately went to another class about computer programming, as if his brain could handle completely different types of information at the same time. And Heye Jin finished her workday by going to a store where she bought ingredients to cook food. But then she also bought a magazine about places she had never visited and would probably never go to. How complicated could these creatures possibly be? Dr. Vextai had said at the beginning of their mission. Now, after just one day of observation, he was starting to think he had made a terrible mistake. Dr. Vextai had not slept well. His dreams were filled with images of humans doing impossible things. When he arrived at the observation station, Kilnara was already there, staring at the screens with all 6 of her eyes wide open. "Sir, you need to see this," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "What happened?" Dr. Vextai asked, though he was not sure he wanted to know. "I've been watching them all night," Kilnara replied. "They don't stop being strange when the sun goes down. If anything, they get worse." On the main screen, they could see Taiho back at his store for another night shift. Everything looked normal at first. He arranged products, cleaned surfaces, and waited for customers. But then Dongwu appeared again. This time, Dongwu was not walking in zigzag lines. He seemed completely normal as he entered the store. He selected a bottle of water and a small bag of snacks, walked to the counter, and placed them down. "That will be 2,500 won," Taiho said. Dongwu reached into his pocket and pulled out the exact amount in proper currency. He paid like a normal customer and turned to leave. But then he stopped, turned around, and walked back to the counter. "Hey, Taiho," Dongwu said casually. "Do you think my goldfish is lonely?" Taiho considered this question seriously. "How big is the tank?" "About this big," Dongwu said, spreading his arms to show the size. "Definitely lonely," Taiho nodded. "You should get him a friend, maybe a small castle too. Goldfish love castles." "That's exactly what I was thinking," Dongwu replied happily. "Thanks for the advice." He left the store, apparently satisfied with this conversation. Dr. Vextai stared at the screen. What just happened? "I think they had a social bonding exchange about aquatic pet care," Kilnara said uncertainly. "But why?" Dr. Vextai asked. "They completed a normal trade transaction. Why did the customer return to discuss unrelated topics with the merchant?" Moradin's metal fingers clicked as he analyzed the interaction. "Perhaps fish ownership creates social obligations in their culture," he suggested. Before Dr. Vextai could respond, another screen showed something even more confusing. Borum was at her home, sitting at a table with books and papers spread out in front of her. She appeared to be preparing lessons for the next day. But instead of reading educational materials, she was drawing pictures of dinosaurs wearing hats and glasses. Each dinosaur had a name written underneath: Professor Stegosaurus, Dr. T-Rex, and Ms. Triceratops. "Educational preparation," Kilnara noted. "She's creating teaching materials." "Those are extinct creatures," Dr. Vextai pointed out, "and they're wearing human accessories. How is this educational?" They got their answer the next morning when Boram used these drawings in her classroom. She showed the pictures to her students and began explaining mathematics using the dinosaurs as examples. "Professor Stegosaurus has 17 plates on his back," she told the children. "If he loses 3 plates, how many does he have left?" The children enthusiastically shouted answers, while completely accepting that a long-dead creature was teaching them math while wearing eyeglasses. "They use fictional scenarios to teach real information," Mordoun observed. "This seems unnecessarily complicated." But the real confusion began when they observed Wu Jin's daily routine. They expected him to attend classes, study, and perform other typical student activities. Instead, they discovered he had created a complex schedule that made no logical sense. Monday, quantum physics class, followed by ancient poetry, followed by a club where humans gathered to discuss fictional stories about space travel. Tuesday, computer programming, followed by a cooking class, followed by a group where humans sat in a circle and shared their feelings. Wednesday, mathematics, followed by a drama class where humans pretended to be other people, followed by a club where humans played games with dice and created imaginary characters. Thursday, chemistry, followed by philosophy, followed by volunteer work at a place where humans cared for abandoned animals. Friday, all of his classes, plus a part-time job at a restaurant, plus a social gathering where humans consumed alcohol and sang loudly to recorded music. How does his brain process such diverse information? Kilnara asked. More importantly, Dr. Vexatai added, why does he choose to do all of these different things? Most species specialize in specific skills. Their confusion reached new heights when they observed Wu Jin's weekend activities. On Saturday morning, he woke up early to exercise by running in circles around his neighborhood for no apparent destination. Then he spent 3 hours playing a game on his computer where he controlled a small character who collected virtual coins and jumped on fictional creatures. After lunch, he met with other humans to play a game where they kicked a round ball back and forth while trying to get it into a rectangular frame. This seemed like reasonable physical activity until they realized the humans had created hundreds of complex rules about when and how the ball could be touched. Saturday evening, Wu Jin went to a building where humans sat in rows and watched. Other humans pretend to be different people while speaking memorized words loudly. The audience paid money for this experience and seemed to enjoy it greatly. Sunday morning, Wu Jin attended a gathering where humans sang songs together and listened to one human talk about invisible beings and moral behavior. Sunday afternoon, he visited his family, where he ate a large meal and argued with his relatives about sports teams they supported, but did not actually play for. Sunday evening, he returned to his room and spent 4 hours video calling friends from different cities to discuss all the activities they had done that weekend. He appears to collect experiences rather than focus on survival skills, Mordun noted. Meanwhile, Hyejin's workplace provided even more puzzling observations. The humans had created a complex social structure with titles, assigned seating, and scheduled meetings. But they also had unspoken rules that seemed to contradict the official structure. For example, there was a human named Kyung-soo who held a low-level position, but whom everyone consulted for important decisions. There was a manager named Yoon-ji who had official authority but spent most of her time asking subordinates for advice. The humans had created a system where they sent electronic messages to each other, even when they sat only a few meters apart. They scheduled meetings to plan other meetings. They wrote reports that nobody seemed to read, but strangest of all, they had social rituals that served no apparent purpose. Every morning, humans would gather near a machine that produced a hot, bitter liquid. They would stand around this machine for 10 to 15 minutes drinking the liquid and discussing topics completely unrelated to their work. Weather, weekend plans, and television shows, and food they had eaten were common subjects. None of these conversations seemed to contribute to their work productivity, yet the humans treated these gatherings as essential. Perhaps the bitter liquid contains nutrients necessary for brain function, Chilnara suggested. Then why do they discuss irrelevant topics while consuming it? Dr. Vextai asked. They decided to monitor the humans' electronic communications to understand their social patterns better. This decision would prove to be a mistake. The humans sent messages to each other constantly throughout the day. But instead of useful information, they shared pictures of food they were about to eat, small animals doing amusing things, and incomprehensible jokes that seemed to follow no logical structure. One human sent a picture of a sandwich to 17 other humans. The responses included, "Looks delicious," "I'm so hungry now," and "Where did you get that?" But nobody actually met to share the sandwich or obtain similar food. Another human shared a photograph of a cat sitting in a cardboard box. This image generated 43 responses from other humans, including lengthy discussions about their own cats, boxes they had observed, and unrelated stories about their childhoods. They appear to document mundane experiences and share them with their social group, Morden observed. But why? Dr. Vextai asked. What purpose does this serve? The answer came when they observed a human named Seok Jin, who worked in the same building as Hee Jin. Seok Jin's job involved analyzing numbers and creating reports. He was good at this work and completed his tasks efficiently. But during his lunch break, Seokjin spent 30 minutes looking at pictures that other humans had shared of their food, pets, and daily activities. Then he shared a picture of his own lunch with a message that said, "Just another Tuesday." Within minutes, other humans responded with similar messages and pictures. They were not exchanging useful information or coordinating activities. They were simply acknowledging each other's existence and daily experiences. Social bonding through shared mundane experiences, Kilnara said slowly. That's actually quite sophisticated, Dr. Vextai admitted reluctantly. They maintain group connections through regular, low-stakes interactions. But before he could feel confident about understanding humans, they observed something that shattered his remaining composure. A human named Young Hee was driving a vehicle through the city. She had activated a device that provided verbal directions to her destination. The device spoke in a pleasant artificial voice, telling her when to turn and which route to take. This seemed like normal use of navigation technology until Young Hee began responding to the device as I. Dr. Vextai made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his very long life. He decided to expand their observation scope. We're clearly missing something important, he told his team. These humans can't possibly survive with such illogical behavior. There must be a deeper pattern we're not seeing. Kilnara nodded eagerly, though her 6 eyes showed signs of strain from the past few days. Should we monitor more individuals? More than that, Dr. Vextai replied. We need to see their mass communication systems, their entertainment, their social gatherings. We need to understand the bigger picture. Morden's metal fingers clicked nervously. Are you certain this is wise? My processing units are all ready, operating at 97% capacity trying to analyze current data. We're scientists, Dr. Vextai declared. We don't give up just because a species is slightly more complex than expected. If he had known what they were about to discover, Dr. Vextai would have packed up their equipment and left Earth's orbit immediately. Instead, he ordered Kilnara to tap into the humans' global communication network. The first thing they discovered was something called social media. Humans were constantly sharing information with each other through electronic networks. Dr. Vextai expected to find important communications about survival, resources, and social coordination. Instead, they found millions of humans voluntarily documenting their daily activities in excruciating detail. A human named Jaewook had spent his entire day posting updates about his activities. Having coffee. Coffee was good. Now walking to work. Saw a dog on the way to work. The dog was brown. Arrived at work. Work is boring today. Lunchtime. Had a sandwich for lunch. Back to work. Still boring. Going home now. Home from work. Why? Does he assume other humans want to know these details? Kilnara asked. More puzzling, Dr. Vextai replied. Why do other humans respond positively to this information? The responses to Jaewook's mundane updates included, "Thanks for sharing," "Love your posts," and "Hope work gets more interesting." Dozens of humans had taken time to acknowledge his boring day, but this was just the beginning of their confusion. They discovered that humans spent enormous amounts of time watching other humans attempt dangerous or impossible tasks for entertainment. A human named Miran had posted a video of herself trying to jump over increasingly large objects in her backyard. She failed spectacularly every time, falling into bushes, knocking over furniture, and eventually landing in a small pond. This video had been viewed 2.3 million times. Humans from around the world had watched Miran repeatedly fail at jumping over things, and they loved it. The comments were enthusiastic. "So funny. I can't stop laughing. Part 2, please. You're so brave for trying. They celebrate failure." Morden asked, his processing units making confused beeping sounds. "Not just celebrate," Kilnara observed. "They're requesting more failure content." Dr. Vextai watched Miran's video again, trying to understand its appeal. From a survival perspective, it demonstrated poor judgment and physical coordination. From an educational perspective, it taught viewers nothing useful. From a social perspective, it should have lowered Miran's status in the group. Instead, it had made her temporarily famous, and she had responded by creating more videos of herself failing at simple tasks. But the human entertainment systems became even more incomprehensible when they discovered memes. These were pictures with text that humans shared at an incredible rate. The images themselves were often meaningless. A confused-looking animal, a person making a strange facial expression, or a random object in an unusual location. One particular image showed a small earth feline sitting at a table with food in front of it. The text read, "Icon has cheeseburger?" This image, with its grammatically incorrect text, had been shared millions of times. Humans created variations of it constantly. They put the same text on pictures of other animals, different foods, and completely unrelated situations. Dr. Vextai spent 3.7 hours trying to understand why millions of humans found this amusing. The grammar was wrong. The scenario was impossible since cats don't eat hamburgers or sit at tables. The humor seemed to rely on these impossibilities, but Dr. Vextai couldn't understand why impossibility was funny. Perhaps humor serves a social function we don't recognize, he suggested weakly. Or perhaps, Kilnara said, her voice cracking slightly, they're all insane. The evidence for this theory mounted when they observed humans' voluntary consumption of painful experiences. They found videos of humans eating food so spicy it caused physical distress. The humans would consume these burning substances while sweating, crying, and making sounds of agony. But instead of learning from this experience and avoiding spicy food in the future, they would immediately sign up to eat even spicier food. A human named Seung Ho had participated in something called a ghost pepper challenge. The aliens watched in horror as he consumed a small red pepper that caused him obvious suffering. His face turned red, tears streamed down his cheeks, and he drank enormous quantities of milk to relieve the burning sensation. That was terrible. Seung Ho gasped into the camera, recording his experience. Absolutely awful. The worst pain I've ever experienced. He paused, wiping tears from his eyes. Totally worth it, though. Same time next week for the Carolina Reaper Challenge? Dr. Vextai's outer carapace began to molt from stress. They seek out suffering for recreational purposes. This violates every principle of evolutionary biology I've ever learned. The situation became worse when they discovered human fan fiction. These were stories that humans wrote about fictional characters, often placing them in romantic or dramatic situations that never happened in the original stories. A 19-year-old human named Yujin had written 127,000 words about kitchen appliances developing consciousness and falling in love. Her story featured detailed relationships between a refrigerator and a microwave, a toaster's unrequited love for a blender, and a complex love triangle involving a coffee maker, an electric kettle, and a food processor. Thousands of other humans had read this story and left encouraging comments requesting more chapters. She has created an alternate reality where household objects have emotional lives, Kilnara observed, and other humans actively participate in this alternate reality. Dr. Vextai added. Why? Morden asked plaintively. What evolutionary advantage does this provide? They had no answer. Their confusion reached a new peak when they monitored a local festival. Humans had gathered in a large group to participate in activities that seemed designed to cause discomfort or embarrassment. There was a competition where humans tried to eat as many hot peppers as possible. Another contest involved humans attempting to carry their romantic partners across a muddy obstacle course. A third activity required humans to sing songs loudly, while other humans threw soft objects at them. All of these activities were voluntary. Humans paid money to participate in experiences that would cause them physical discomfort, social embarrassment, or both. The pepper eating contest was particularly confusing. Contestants lined up eagerly to consume increasingly spicy peppers. As the heat level increased, participants began sweating, crying, and making sounds of distress. Several humans had to stop eating and drink large quantities of milk. But instead of being eliminated from the competition, these humans were cheered by the crowd. The other participants congratulated them on their effort. The humans who had failed. The challenge seemed just as happy as those who continued. They celebrate participation in suffering, Dr. Vextai observed. Not just participation, Kilnara corrected. They've created a social event specifically to gather and suffer together voluntarily. A human named Jin Wu won the pepper-eating contest by consuming a pepper so hot that he couldn't speak for 10 minutes afterward. When he finally recovered, his first words were, "That was amazing. When's the next one?" The crowd cheered his victory, and several humans immediately asked about signing up for the next pepper-eating contest. Dr. Vextai felt his sanity beginning to fracture. They enjoy pain. They seek out failure. They create fiction about inanimate objects. They share mundane experiences as entertainment. They form social bonds with machines. He paused, trying to organize his thoughts, and somehow, despite all of this completely illogical behavior, they've developed technology, built cities, and created a global communication network. Morden's processing units were making alarming noises. "Sir, I am experiencing systematic errors in my logic circuits. Human behavior does not compute." "Maybe we should take a break," Chilnara suggested. Her purple skin had turned pale and several of her eyes were twitching, but Dr. Vexatai was determined to understand these creatures. "No, we're scientists. There must be an explanation. We just need to dig deeper." He ordered Morden to analyze human workplace behavior. Surely, when humans were focused on survival activities like earning resources, they would behave more logically. This decision would push all three aliens past their psychological breaking points. The workplace they selected was a typical human office building. It housed several companies that performed various business functions. The humans arrived each morning, worked at desks with computers, attended meetings, and left each evening. From a distance, it looked organized and purposeful. From closer observation, it was complete chaos disguised as structure. The humans had created a complex hierarchy of job title, doctor. Vextai thought he had seen the worst of human behavior. He was wrong. The aliens decided to monitor what they assumed would be a simple, straightforward event, a human workplace. They chose the office building where Hiejin worked, expecting to observe organized, productive behavior. Instead, they witnessed 5 days of escalating chaos that would shatter their remaining faith in logical thinking. Monday morning began normally. Humans arrived at their designated times, sat at their assigned desks, and began working on their computers. Dr. Vexatai felt a moment of relief. Finally, humans were behaving predictably. Then a human named Kyung-soo from the accounting department sent an electronic message to all 200 employees in the building. The message contained a single sentence. "Reminder, Friday is Casual Friday." Dr. Vexatai expected this to be a simple announcement about relaxed clothing rules. Instead, it triggered 4 days of intense debate and preparation. Within minutes, humans throughout the building began exchanging messages about what constituted casual versus too casual. Some humans argued that jeans were appropriate. Others insisted that jeans were too informal. A third group suggested that the definition of casual varied by department. Kyung-soo, apparently overwhelmed by the responses, spent his entire afternoon creating a detailed presentation about appropriate casual wear. His presentation included 47 slides covering topics like acceptable footwear categories, sleeve length guidelines, and the psychology of color in workplace casual wear. "He's creating a complex rule system about clothing," Chilnara observed. "For 1 day per week," Morden added. "They spend more time planning their casual clothing than most species spend on survival strategies." Tuesday brought a new crisis. The coffee machine in the break room stopped working. Dr. Vextai expected the humans to simply replace the broken machine or find an alternative source of caffeine. Instead, the office split into 3 competing factions, each with different strategies for addressing the crisis. Team Instant Coffee, led by a human named Yoon-ji, argued that powdered coffee dissolved in hot water was a practical short-term solution. They purchased supplies and set up a station in the break room. Team Bring Your Own, championed by Hyunwoo, insisted that each individual should take responsibility for their own caffeine needs. They created a sign-up sheet for humans to coordinate bringing coffee from home. Team Anarchy was represented solely by a human named So-young, who brought a camping stove to work and began brewing coffee using outdoor equipment in the parking lot. The 3 factions did not cooperate. Instead, They competed to prove their approach was superior. Humans throughout the building chose sides and defended their chosen coffee strategy with passionate arguments. Yoon-ji posted scientific articles about instant coffee's nutritional value. Hyun-woo created a cost-benefit analysis of different coffee preparation methods. So-young sent pictures of her outdoor coffee setup with messages like, "Real coffee for real people." They've created a territorial conflict over beverage preparation, Dr. Vestan noted, his tentacles beginning to twitch. The broken machine could be repaired or replaced in one day, Morden pointed out. Instead, they've developed competing ideologies about coffee consumption. Wednesday introduced an even stranger crisis. Someone had used the break room microwave to heat fish for lunch. The smell lingered in the air for several hours. Instead of simply opening windows or using air freshener, the humans divided into two opposing groups: justice seekers and privacy protectors. The justice seekers, led by a human named Nam-soo, launched a full investigation to identify the fish-heating perpetrator. Nam-soo reviewed security camera footage, interviewed witnesses, and created a timeline of breakroom usage. He posted updates on his investigation like he was solving a major crime. The privacy protectors, organized by Ga-young, argued that food choices were personal decisions and that investigating employees' lunch habits violated their rights. They created a support group for olfactory trauma victims while simultaneously protecting the identity of the fish heater. The two groups held opposing meetings in different conference rooms. They created competing petitions about microwave usage policies. They sent lengthy emails defending their positions. Meanwhile, the original problem, a lingering smell, had disappeared naturally within a few hours. But the humans continued their ideological battle about fish-heating justice for the rest of the week. They've created a complex moral conflict about food preparation, Kilnara said, her voice cracking with strain. The issue resolved itself, Doctor, Vexti pointed out. But they're still fighting about it. Thursday brought the discovery that transformed the office into complete madness. A human named Dae-woon realized that the elevator played different music depending on which floor you selected. This observation should have been mildly interesting at best. Instead, it became an obsession that consumed the entire building. Humans began riding the elevator constantly, not to travel between floors, but to hear all the different songs. They created lists of which music played for which floors. They ranked the songs from best to worst. They debated whether the music selection was random or intentional. Soon, humans were spending more time in the elevator than at their desks. The elevator became so crowded with music-listening humans that people who actually needed to travel between floors couldn't use it. The building management sent a message asking humans to use the elevator only for transportation. This message was ignored. Humans began taking turns riding the elevator in small groups, creating an unofficial schedule for elevator music appreciation. They started meeting in the lobby to discuss their favorite elevator songs. Some humans brought notebooks to record the music they heard. A human named Mi-jung created a comprehensive database of elevator music, including song titles, duration, and floor assignments. She shared this database with the entire building, and humans began requesting specific floors just to hear particular songs. By Thursday evening, the elevator had become a concert venue. Humans gathered inside to listen to music together, even when none of them needed to change floors. They've transformed a transportation device into an entertainment system, Morden observed, his processing units making increasingly distressed sounds. And they've created a social gathering around machine-generated music, Dr. Vexatai added weakly. But Friday, Casual Friday, brought the absolute peak of human absurdity. After 4 days of intense preparation and debate about casual clothing, the humans arrived at work in outfits that defied all logic. Half the humans had interpreted casual to mean ironic formal wear. They wore elegant suits, fancy dresses, and expensive shoes specifically to contradict the casual dress code. They explained this choice as making a statement about conformity expectations. The other half had interpreted casual as creative expression opportunity. They wore increasingly bizarre combinations of clothing to demonstrate their individuality. Kyung-soo, who had created the 47-slide presentation about appropriate casual wear, arrived dressed as a giant pencil. His costume included a yellow outfit with a pink eraser hat. Hyejin appeared in a complete penguin costume, explaining to anyone who asked that Thursday felt like a penguin day, so Friday should continue the theme. A human named Seokmin wore a formal tuxedo jacket with bright purple shorts and hiking boots. His reasoning: business on top, party in the middle, adventure on the bottom. Jin Young constructed an outfit entirely from office supplies. She wore a skirt made of manila folders, a top crafted from sticky notes, and jewelry created from paper clips and rubber bands. The humans who had dressed ironically formal began competing with the humans who had dressed creatively casual. Both groups critiqued each other's fashion choices while simultaneously praising their own interpretations. Meanwhile, a small group of humans had worn normal casual clothing, jeans and comfortable shirts, exactly as the original dress code intended. These humans were completely ignored by both competing factions. They created a complex rule system, Dr. Vextai said slowly, then deliberately violated it in creative ways, while criticizing others for different violations, while ignoring those who followed the rules correctly, and they seemed to enjoy this chaos, Kilnara added. They created the chaos deliberately, Morden pointed out. This entire week of conflict could have been avoided by simply replacing the coffee machine and ignoring the elevator music. Dr. Vextai stared at the screen showing humans in bizarre outfits riding the elevator, to hear music while debating fish heating ethics and coffee preparation philosophy. They don't want to avoid conflict, he realized with growing horror. They create problems specifically so they can have complex social interactions about solving them. His tentacles began twitching uncontrollably. They're not trying to be efficient or logical. They're trying to be interesting. The week concluded with an office-wide meeting where humans were supposed to discuss productivity improvements. Instead, they spent the entire hour debating whether Kyung-soo's pencil costume was more creative than Hyejin's penguin suit. No productivity improvements were discussed. No decisions were made about the coffee machine, elevator music policy, or microwave usage guidelines. The humans seemed Dr. Vexitai's decision to observe Young-sik's birthday party would be remembered as the moment 3 alien scientists completely lost their minds. Jung-sik was a 30-year-old human who worked at a bookstore and lived in a small apartment. When his friends asked what he wanted for his birthday, he gave them very clear instructions. Nothing big, just cake with a few friends. Keep it simple. The aliens expected a quiet gathering with perhaps 5 humans, some food, and basic gift-giving. This seemed like the perfect opportunity to observe normal human social behavior, without workplace complications or festival chaos. They were completely wrong. Jung-sik's friends, Mi-ran, Seok-jin, Hae-won, and Chang-min, interpreted his request for simplicity as a challenge to create the most elaborate celebration possible while technically following his instructions. The planning began 3 weeks before the birthday. The aliens watched in growing bewilderment as the 4 friends held secret meetings, sent encrypted messages, and created detailed plans that would have impressed military strategists. Mi-ran took charge of entertainment. She remembered that Jung-sik had once mentioned enjoying music, so she hired a 12-piece mariachi band to serenade him with traditional Mexican songs. Her reasoning: he said he liked music, so more music is better. The mariachi band cost more money than Jung-sik spent on food in 3 months, but Mi-ran considered this a reasonable birthday expense. Seok-jin handled the cake situation. Jung-sik had requested cake, so Seok-jin commissioned a professional baker to create a 6-foot-tall sculpture of Jung-sik's head made entirely of chocolate cake and vanilla frosting. The cake required its own delivery truck and professional installation team. He wanted cake, Seok-jin explained to the confused baker. This is technically cake. Hae-won was responsible for guest arrangements. Jung-sik had asked for a few friends, so she contacted everyone who had ever interacted with Jung-sik in any positive way. This included his middle school math teacher, Mrs. Park, whom Jung-sik had mentioned once in a conversation about memorable educators. Hae-won tracked down Mrs. Park's contact information, called her, and convinced her to attend the party as a surprise guest. Mrs. Park, who was now 72 years old and had taught thousands of students, somehow remembered Young-sik and agreed to come. She also brought all of Young-sik's old homework assignments, which she had kept for 18 years, just in case. Changmin was in charge of activities. Since Young-sik had requested nothing big, Changmin created an elaborate scavenger hunt that was technically small in scope, but involved the entire neighborhood. The scavenger hunt required participants to find hidden clues in 12 different locations, solve mathematical puzzles, answer questions about Young-sik's childhood, and perform tasks like convince a stranger to sing Happy Birthday, and find someone wearing a red hat and get them to dance. Changmin had spent 2 weeks hiding clues around the neighborhood, bribing local store owners to participate, and creating puzzles that referenced obscure details from Young-sik's life. Dr. Vextai watched these preparations with growing dread. They're creating a massive event while convincing themselves it's simple because their friend requested simplicity. They're following the literal meaning of his words while completely ignoring the spirit of his request, Kilnara observed. More concerning, Morden added, they genuinely believe they're being thoughtful friends. The day of the party arrived. Young-sik left work expecting to meet a few friends at his apartment for cake and casual conversation. Instead, he found his building surrounded by a mariachi band, a crowd of confused neighbors, 3 pizza delivery trucks, and a team of professional cake installers attempting to maneuver a 6-foot chocolate sculpture through his front door. The cake was too large to fit through the doorway. This should have been a simple problem with a simple solution. Cut the cake into smaller pieces and reassemble it inside. Instead, Seokjin refused to damage his artistic creation. Young-sik's neighbors gathered to offer conflicting advice, and the cake installers began measuring windows to see if they could hoist the sculpture to Young-sik's second-floor apartment, using ropes and pulleys. The mariachi band, meanwhile, had begun playing enthusiastic birthday songs in Spanish. The music was beautiful, but none of the humans spoke Spanish, so they had no idea what was being sung. The band had learned Young-sik's name phonetically and pronounced it differently in each song. The neighborhood crowd grew as curious humans came to investigate the music, the giant cake, and the pizza delivery confusion. Changmin's scavenger hunt had accidentally involved people from 3 different apartment buildings, and participants were approaching random strangers, asking about Young-sik's childhood pets and favorite colors. Mrs. Park arrived precisely on time, carrying a briefcase full of Young-sik's old homework and test papers. She had prepared a presentation about Young-sik's mathematical development between ages 12 and 14, complete with charts showing his grade progression. Young-sik, she announced proudly, you were always my favorite student. I brought all your old assignments so we can reminisce about your academic journey. Young-sik, who had barely remembered Mrs. Park's name, stared in amazement as his 72-year-old former teacher began setting up a portable projector in his living room. The pizza delivery drivers had become part of the chaos. Changmin's scavenger hunt included a clue that required participants to find the person bringing food to the celebration. The hunt participants had interpreted this to mean all 3 pizza delivery drivers, who were now being interviewed about their life stories and asked to participate in birthday song performances. One pizza driver, a 19-year-old named Tae-min, was discovered to have artistic talents and was immediately recruited to help solve the cake installation problem. He suggested removing Young-sik's window and using a small crane to lift the cake sculpture directly into the apartment. Young-sik's neighbors, who had initially come to complain about the noise, became invested in solving the cake problem. An elderly woman named Ms. Kim offered her grandson's toy crane. A college student named Woo Young volunteered to climb through the window and guide the cake from inside. The mariachi band adapted their performance to provide musical accompaniment for the cake installation attempt. They played dramatic, suspenseful music as neighbors worked together to remove Young-sik's window. Dr. Vextai watched this chaos unfold with growing horror. They've transformed a simple birthday request into a neighborhood-wide engineering project, with musical accompaniment. And everyone seems to be enjoying it, Kilnara added weakly. Including Young-sik, Morden observed. The birthday human appears delighted by this completely unplanned community event. Indeed, Youngsik was laughing with genuine joy as his neighbors collaborated to install a 6-foot cake sculpture in his apartment, while a mariachi band played and his middle school teacher prepared a mathematical retrospective presentation. The scavenger hunt had evolved into a block party. Jiang Min's carefully planned clues had been abandoned as participants created new challenges for each other. Children were racing between buildings delivering messages. Adults were forming teams to solve puzzles that had nothing to do with the original hunt. The pizza delivery drivers had become party guests. Tae Min was teaching Mrs. Park how to use the portable projector. The other 2 drivers were helping with the crane operation while discussing their college plans with interested neighbors. The mariachi band had run out of birthday songs and begun taking requests from the crowd. They were now playing a mixture of traditional Mexican music, American pop songs with Spanish lyrics, and completely improvised tunes based on shouted suggestions. As the sun set, Youngsik's simple apartment birthday party had become a street festival involving 47 people, including 3 professional musicians, 2 pizza delivery experts, 1 mathematics teacher, and 39 neighbors who had never spoken to each other before. The 6-foot cake sculpture had been successfully installed in Youngsik's living room, though it required removing a window and rearranging all his furniture. Mrs. Park had completed her presentation about his academic development, including a detailed analysis of his improvement in geometry during 8th grade. The scavenger hunt had created lasting friendships between strangers. The mariachi band had been invited to return for future neighborhood events. The pizza delivery drivers had been offered part-time jobs by impressed neighbors, and Youngsik, who had requested a simple gathering with a few friends, declared it the best birthday of his entire life. Dr. Vexitai began making involuntary sounds that his species produced only during severe psychological distress. They ignored his explicit instructions, he whimpered. They involved strangers in private celebrations, Kilnara added, her 6 eyes twitching uncontrollably. They created chaos from order, Morden concluded, his processing unit generating error messages in 3 different languages. And it worked perfectly, Dr. Vexitai whispered. They made him happier by doing everything wrong. But the aliens' breaking point came when they discovered what Youngsik did next. The following week, Youngsik began planning a surprise party for Miran's upcoming birthday. His approach: hire 2 mariachi bands, commission an 8-foot cake sculpture, invite Miran's elementary school principal, and create a scavenger hunt that involved the entire city. He learned from the experience. Dr. Vexitai sat in front of his computer, staring at a blank document titled Human Species Analysis Report, Final Draft. His tentacles twitched uncontrollably as he tried to organize his thoughts into something that resembled scientific analysis. After 7 days of observing humans, he had 3,247 hours of recorded data, 12,000 pages of notes, and absolutely no idea how to explain what they had witnessed to the Galactic Research Institute. How do I write a report about a species that shouldn't exist? He muttered. Kilnara, who had been speaking only in binary code for the past 2 days, managed to return to normal language long enough to say, maybe we start with the basic facts and work from there. What basic facts? Dr. Vexitai replied. That they create problems to solve them inefficiently, that they form social bonds with machines, that they celebrate failure and seek out suffering for entertainment. Morden's processing unit made a sad beeping sound. My logical analysis subroutines have crashed permanently. I can no longer process human behavior using standard intelligence parameters. Dr. Vexitai began typing. Subject: Homo sapiens, colloquially known as humans. Planet: Earth, 3rd planet, from local star. Observation period: 7 standard galactic days. Conclusion: Request immediate reclassification as anomalous species. He stopped typing and deleted everything except the title. The problem was that humans had violated every known principle of evolutionary biology, social organization, and logical thinking. Yet somehow, they had not only survived, but thrived. They had developed advanced technology, complex societies, and global communication networks. Dr. Vextai tried again. Key findings. Humans exhibit behavioral patterns that contradict 67 established laws of evolutionary psychology. They deliberately create inefficient solutions to simple problems. Their social structures are simultaneously rigid and completely flexible. They appear to prioritize entertainment and social complexity over survival optimization. They have weaponized absurdity as a cultural survival mechanism. He paused at that last point. It had taken him 6 days to realize that humans weren't accidentally absurd. They were strategically absurd. Their chaos wasn't random, it was carefully cultivated. The more he had observed them, the more he realized that humans used unpredictability as a form of social bonding. They created complicated solutions to simple problems because the complications were fun. They ignored efficient approaches because efficiency was boring. They've evolved to be interesting, he said out loud. What? Kilnara asked. Think about it, Doctor. Vextai continued, his excitement growing despite his exhaustion. Every other species we've studied optimizes for survival, reproduction, or resource acquisition. Humans optimize for experience. They want their lives to be complex, unpredictable, and socially engaging. That still makes no evolutionary sense, Mordun protested. Unless, Dr. Vextai said slowly, their intelligence became so advanced that basic survival was no longer challenging, so they created artificial challenges to keep themselves mentally stimulated. He looked at his notes again. Humans had mastered agriculture, medicine, and technology to the point where survival was relatively easy. But instead of becoming complacent, they had invented increasingly elaborate ways to complicate their lives. They created art, sports, entertainment, fashion, cuisine, and countless other cultural activities that served no direct survival purpose, but provided mental stimulation and social engagement. They're not broken, Dr. Vextai realized. They're evolved beyond basic survival needs. This insight should have helped him write the report. Instead, it made everything worse. If humans had evolved beyond survival optimization, what were they optimizing for? How do you analyze a species that deliberately chose complexity over efficiency, creativity over logic, and experience over safety? Dr. Vextai tried a different approach. Instead of explaining human behavior, he would simply document it and let the Galactic Research Institute draw their own conclusions. He spent 18 hours creating a comprehensive list of observed human activities. Documented behaviors, voluntary consumption of pain, inducing food for entertainment, creation of fictional narratives about household objects, formation of emotional relationships with navigation systems, elaborate planning of simple social gatherings, workplace, conflicts over beverage preparation methods, competitive failure exhibitions, musical transportation systems, ironic compliance with dress codes, investigative responses to minor olfactory incidents, mathematical presentations by elderly educators. At birthday celebrations, the list grew to 847 specific behaviors, each more inexplicable than the last. Dr. Vextai realized that anyone reading this list would assume he had suffered a complete psychological breakdown and was inventing impossible scenarios. No one will believe this report, he told his team. Maybe that's for the best, Kilnara suggested. Do we really want other species to know about humans? Before Dr. Vextai could answer, their communication system received an urgent message from the Galactic Research Institute. Request status update on human analysis. Expected completion date? Dr. Vextai stared at the message. How could he explain that humans were simultaneously the most successful and most illogical species they had ever encountered? How could he describe beings that created chaos for entertainment, solved problems inefficiently, for fun, and formed deep emotional connections with inanimate objects? He couldn't, so he wrote the only honest response possible. Urgent. Request immediate extraction, human species analysis. Preliminary findings. Humans operate on principles that violate fundamental laws of evolutionary psychology. They have achieved technological advancement despite behavioral patterns that should result in extinction. Their society functions through organized chaos, deliberate inefficiency, and voluntary complications. Recommend immediate classification as anomalous species requiring specialized research team with psychological support staff. Current research team requests emergency therapy and extended leave. Specific concerns. Standard intelligence analysis protocols do not apply. Logical framework insufficient for human behavior patterns. Risk of permanent psychological damage to research personnel. Possible threat to galactic understanding of evolutionary biology. Immediate action required. Extract current research team. Establish quarantine protocols for human observation. Develop new analytical frameworks for post-survival species. Consider whether humans represent evolutionary advancement or cosmic. Error. Final note. Humans appear to be aware of observation and may be deliberately exhibiting extreme behavior to confuse researchers. Recommend minimal contact protocols. Dr. Vexatai sent the message and immediately began packing their equipment. Are we really leaving? Kilnara asked. We have to, Dr. Vexatai replied. If we stay longer, we'll either go completely insane or become like them. Maybe becoming like them wouldn't be so bad, Morden suggested. They seem happy. Dr. Vextai and Kilnara stared at their logical, rational colleague in horror. That's it, Dr. Vextai announced. We're leaving now. As they prepared to depart Earth's orbit, Dr. Vextai decided to take one final look at the humans they had been observing. Tejo was at his convenience store, having a philosophical discussion with a customer about whether cereal qualified as soup. Boram was teaching her students about geography using locations from fairy tales. Wu Jin was eating breakfast while studying physics and explaining his career concerns to his plant. Hia Jin was writing stories about sentient office equipment falling in love. All of them seemed perfectly content with their bizarre, illogical lives. But the final transmission that convinced Dr. Vexistai to flee immediately came from a human named Young Hee, who was alone in her car, having an animated conversation with her GPS navigation system. Thank you for the directions, she said to the device. You're welcome, came the artificial response. How was your day? Young Hee continued. The GPS, of course, did not respond to this question. Oh, the strong, silent type, Young Hee said with amusement. I respect that. My day was good too, thanks for asking. She paused at a red light and looked at the GPS screen affectionately. You know, you're a really good listener. Most of my friends just want to talk about their own problems, but you actually pay attention to where I need to go in life. The light turned green. Thanks for always being there for me, Young Hee said as she drove away. You're the most reliable relationship I've ever had. Dr. Vexatai turned off the observation equipment and walked away from the controls. That's it, he announced. We're done. Seal the ship and prepare for immediate departure. What about the final report? Kilnara asked. I'll write it during the journey home, Dr. Vextai replied. Right now, I need to put as much distance as possible between us and this planet. 3 hours later, their ship left Earth's orbit at maximum speed. Dr. Vextai sent one final message to the Galactic Research Institute. Human observation complete. Emergency extraction. Successful. Recommend immediate classification of humans as anomalous species. Do not engage. Full report will be transmitted upon return to base. Warning. Humans may be aware of extraterrestrial observation and deliberately exhibiting extreme behavior for entertainment purpose.